Hi, I'm Andrew Armstrong and welcome to the Back Office Teardown Lab. You might recognise these. These are graphics cards, and let me tell you, I have been through an awful lot of these. And these happen to be the last couple that I have in my rendering rig. And that rig is crashing like heck at the moment. We have hot weather here in the UK. And one of these cards, and I have to admit I don't quite know which one it is actually running at 91 degrees pretty much in idle. I wonder if it's this one. Look at this label, looks like it's been completely sheared off. It's rubbing against something. But what I decided to do, I opened up that PC and looked at the CPU fan, and it was absolutely caked in fluff. So I took an airline to this and tried to blow it out, but I'm not really sure how good a job it's done. So I thought we would take these apart and put some heatsink compound and hopefully just make sure everything is working. So the first thing is to dismantle them. I'm just prizing these tabs because I hope this plastic cover just pops off. It has a vibe of a cover that'll pop off. I'm using quite an unwieldy screwdriver, so if you're attempting this, be careful, because if you rake that across your PCB, you're going to damage it. Oh, good. Now, I heard something rattle when I did that, so I might have broken something, but we'll take a bit of care as we go along. Probably just a bit of plastic tab or something like that. Took a bit of brute force and ignorance, but let's start in on this bad boy. So you can see this is the 6870, and these are all quite old technology now. Not too much dust in the inner cover, and by the way, there were two little springs. They look exactly like battery springs, like you'd have in your remote control, and I have no idea where they came out of, so that'll be interesting to go and find those. So you have a fan here, which is on top of an integrated metalwork here, which is obviously a heatsink bonded to some components, and then you have your pipe here, your cooling plate going to these radiator fins, and there is a bit of gunk in there, but to be honest, I'm looking at it through, I can see light right through that. That really isn't that bad at all. So my main worry would be whether or not that fan is actually turning properly, which we can easily test. And then I did some tests on the bench before I took this down, and the software is reporting the fans actually are running as expected. But then maybe the other thing could be that the heatsink compound could be all dried up and gnarly on that one. So we'll have a look at that momentarily, and I'll just figure out though first how to get this one off, because I think it's one of those things that'd be nice to do them both at the same time rather than one at the other. While we've got the heatsink compound out, it'd be easier just to slather it onto both. So I'll try to figure out how this one works. Couldn't find the tabs in this one, so I'm just going to unscrew it right away. We might well find that we have to unscrew the other one anyway. So I'm sure I'll learn something about it all. These are quite the workhorses really. I was researching this before this video because I wanted to know what the typical temperatures were. And they say they could typically sit around 60, even to 80. But once they start hitting higher than that for long periods of time, you could be in for trouble. And as this machine is on 24/7 for years, potentially, and it's crunching numbers, doing the video processing, graphic processing, playing games, there is an awful chance that it might have baked out some of the heatsink compounds. So it's definitely worth having a look at it. A little bit more interesting, doesn't it? It just pops straight off like that. Definitely an all-in-one. I kind of made me question the other one actually, on whether or not I went about that the right way with doing all the clips, but I think that's fine. We'll probably do the same on that. So you can see that's the fan, and you've got this weird little plenum chamber that it's sitting in, and there's the copper of the heatsink, and there's the actual fin. So this one's a little bit more integrated, and just off camera, blew in that. Yeah, that's had quite a bit of dust in here, so I'll probably take an airline to this and do that outside. And let's have a look at this compound here. Well, it's definitely got some. Whether it's good or bad, I don't know. You know, I was just looking at it, who knows, but we'll definitely replace that. And because I've undone a bunch of screws here, potentially all of this metalwork here will come off. But I probably have to undo these two little screws here at the front. Those are the remaining two. Fortunately not very tight. This is nice. Nice to do a little bit of servicing, isn't it? Ah, there you go, it is coming off. Just gently popping it off there. And I can see a lot of heat. Right, so, my word. I'm going to show you that in a moment. But look at this, it's got these little heaty pads on here. I guess they're heat transfer pads, and there's some sort of adhesive goo. And we don't really want to touch that, but we probably will add additional compound to make at least more contact. But that is not really as good as obviously metal to metal contact there. But the reason I'm mentioning that has been specifically, and you might not see that, is that this board looks scorched. Look at here, around where my finger is. You can actually see the board has a bluish colour on the PCB itself, and here all of this looks like it has been actually cooked. If you heat a PCB with a hot air blower, and you'll see the actual material of the PCB, the different layers, the silk screens start to discolour, and that is what's going on over there. So much so, I think we need to give it a little wipe to see what the damage is. I suspect this is the card that was reporting itself as being 91 degrees the whole time, even in idle. I'm surprised they don't shut themselves down sooner, to be honest with you. This is the level of damage they're taking on. So I'm just giving them a wipe. The idea is hopefully that we'll just wipe something off, that maybe that colour discoloration was some old flux or something that's on there as part of the manufacturing process burning rather than the traces themselves. Have another look now. The effect is definitely less pronounced, so good. Phew. We'll just continue. We'll just give this whole thing a bloody good cleaning. Just wiping away all of the old compound. Look at that, it's actually got a dent in it even. I wonder if that's a factory provided dent. I suspect it must be. It might just be how cheaply these things are made. Interesting enough, there is a mark here, 2010. Could it really be that old? I do lose track because sometimes these parts are just replacement parts that I got from Gumtree or eBay in an emergency, and they've kind of just sat there. But yeah, you could buff that up a little bit more, I suppose, but maybe just give it a little bit of a hone with a bit of emery paper. I think that'll be good. I did blast some air down there, and it did push out a little bit of dust, but nothing too considerable, just surface dust. Now I need to be a little bit more careful cleaning this guy. So what I'm going to do is put a piece of kitchen roll, and I'll double it over there. Get our flux cleaner, and then with my dabbing brush I'm going to dab all over into those little surface mount components. Could wash the PCB as well if you're really keen, as long as you've got a means to dry it, and you can see it's starting to come off now. In fact, let's flood a little bit there, and I see a little bit of dust here on the board in general. I'll just use a little bit, a gentle amount, just to act as a gentle cleaner. And any of these places where components touch those heat sinks, I'm going to definitely get in there and individually clean those up as well later. But my focus is this big guy. Just the final pass with some blue roll. You can see that's sparkling now, nice and shiny. I'm just going to again use the blue roll to really help me get any of that surface filth. Generally will adhere to the roll. Just work your way around. It doesn't matter too much if the paper rips, but just try not to cause too much lint. You can always double up if you want a little bit more. I'm just going to do these little components in here. And then you're free to do it. Just one more drying pass really. If you get bored, just ever so gently, just you can wipe the board down. If there's a surface mount component in the way, like these little tiny resistors, be ever so careful. You really could break them off the board. You don't want to do that. Shiny. I think we're at a good point to reassemble this one. I know I was going to do two in parallel, but I don't think that's as wise now. So you can see I've buffed that up a little bit just to help. And we just have to choose the order. I think we should go with fitting this bit back first because that was the way we took it off, but also it allows us to work on that main GPU separately. A little bit of dust still on here. Let's just get that off where it's stuck to the edge. Now what I'm going to do though is take some compound, and you can use your favourite Arctic whatever, and then I'm going to put, oh no, it's got the juice. Let me just wipe it out. The carrier kind of juiciness of it's in there. Let's get that out. We want compound, not liquid. Not been used for a while. Okay, so let's try again. Yeah, that one's still a bit juicy, but I'm sure it will fade in time. My gosh, it's almost like a liquid, this darn stuff. There we go. So you can see I'm just putting a blob on each. Probably way too much, by the way, but people sort of complain though, you know, who's going to clean it up, what's it going to do? I don't think it's going to have really any negative thing. I'm just wiping off the first 3 blobs because they weren't quite as good. It's not conductive. It might go somewhere you don't want it to go, but I don't really care. We're talking about a board which is pretty much dead to me right now, unless I can get it working. And frankly, there are way better, more modern GPUs that are probably next to nothing on the market right now. So that should be good. We've got all the major places. Cover all the main bases there. I'm just going to push that down. Now while I'm at it, because it did have a couple of different screws on the end, these two, I'm going to put those in so you don't lose track of them. The CPU itself, that was held in with 4 spring screws on that little bracket, so that obviously has to go in at the very end as well. There, but this will stop that moving around. It's not going anywhere. Main CPU, or GPU rather in this case, to do now. All the other bracket though is in and it's all nicely squished down, and that was nice and tight. Give it a little bit of an extra tie-in. So again, we've got to choose how much to do. Not sure. That's going to be my answer. So too much, I think, is called for. And we could always test this a little bit. So if we place this down and then lift it back up, we can see what kind of spludge we got. Okay, and we're going to lift it back up. Wow, that was like nothing. I'm going to plug it all in just in case this wire was in my way while I was doing it. Is that possible that we could get nothing? I must have just had it misaligned. There's no way we wouldn't have got something. Right, so squeeze, squeeze, and release. Oh, that was good. That would have been pretty darn good as it was. So I'm just going to put a tiny bit there in the middle. Again, don't want to void. Squeeze and release. So you can see that's the spludge. Suppose you could always pile it up in the middle here as well. That's fine. That'll do. People get very precious about their technique, don't they? Okay, so we have our bracket. Just 4 little screws. And I don't think I showed you the removal of this, but it's all pretty obvious. It has springs on the screws. Don't lose those. But then try to do them in a sensible order. So get them all started, make sure there's no cross threads, and then just work your way around in a circle, incrementally tightening them until you cannot tighten them anymore. And then I suspect that will be good enough. Back to our first one, and this is notably heavier actually. I know this is just working on the other one, but moving them around, it really is. And you can see this has a way more major heatsink on it. I can tell. Look at it. It really feels like a block of bloody metal. So I'm going to take that fan connector out, just because I'm going to do what I did on the last one, where I just went round and undid every screw I could find on the bottom. We'll get our little magnet ready there. Now this was the one that had the little springs pop out, so that was an odd thing. I've not seen what those springs could be for. I thought they could be potentially like a bonding to the outer cover, but the outer cover is not metal, so it's probably not that. So they might just be something to stop a rattle. You know, it could be a rattle, a rattle prevention mechanism. Okay, that's the last bit off. I heard a drop. Boom. There we go. That's the cooler. Oh my word, that is heavy. I'm really quite impressed with that. And that's where my screwdriver hit the end on a couple of fins. There's an invention, by the way, to straightening fins out. I noticed you just drag it across the edge of fins like a comb, but that looks actually pretty good. I might try to blow through that, but that's absolutely fine. You could give that a wash if you're really concerned. And very much like the other one, I can see already some fur growing. I'm just going to see if I can pop this off. It's always worth checking though for any last screws. I don't know if you've ever tried to pull apart an engine or a gearbox or something like that, but sometimes you'll be fighting it and then you'll discover that one wafer thin, one tiny screw, nut, bolt, whatever, holding on for dear life, and it'll stop the whole thing coming apart. But the difference with them, they won't break, whereas a PCB will. Probably clean the dust off, by the way, before you open this, because it's probably easier to wipe away without it getting everywhere. I'm not going to worry too much about that. It's there, but we can just pinch it off with these tweezers for now. Because I don't have any of whatever that stuff's made of. We don't want to damage it too much. Might need a knife to get under there if it doesn't come willingly. Oh, that's not too bad, not too bad. Come on, come on. And I might fit it a little bit more custom when I put this back, because you can see it's quite a long piece and there's big gaps between them, so we could probably cut that with no gaps. Pop that over there out of the way. Good. So that in itself looks okay. As long as the fan's running, we can just give that a wipe down off camera. There's no problem there. The heat sink, absolutely fine. But again, very dry dry compound, and you can see how easily that just come apart. And it sounds like thunder outside. My God, word. Now looking at the board here, we don't have those same burn marks on here, so this one definitely doesn't look like it's been getting as hot, but we're going to give this the treatment. We're ready to go again now, fit everything back. So the first thing I'm going to do though is take care of this weird material by custom fitting it this time on the top, where they just draped it across before. And the reason is I want to try to avoid any voids in it. So I'm going to pop that there. There we go. Because there were some holes in it last time when we took it off. Fortunately that piece has still got a hole in it, but we'll be able to add a little extra. Okay, and now this is the main one where I've avoided a cavity. It's a bit furry, that one. Get the fur off. And you might be screaming at the screen saying, why am I doing it so slapdash? Well, think about what we're doing here. We're not restoring a graphics card, we're just servicing it to get it going so we can get on with our work. This one, just for fun, is a bit of an experiment. I wonder what happened. Tell you what, let's not do that. I was going to say, I wonder what happened if we'll double it up. I've got other plans. I want to put compound on here, so I definitely don't want to double it up. Okay, good. So let's splooge some Ooh, hang on a minute. I've done this wrong, haven't I? Okay, so I'm going to put the splooge on there, like that. I want the foamy sort of heat transfer pad to go flat to the metalwork of the case. So that's the correct order. I'll put some here, blob on each, and tricky to get to, but we'll just about manage. Boom. So I'm pretty pleased with that so far. I'll just turn this guy around. There was just ever so slight amount of heat, indicators of heat there, where you see these test points or wires just slightly darker at the top. They looked a little bit like they've got a little bit warm, a little bit hot under the collar, but nothing too bad. I'm just going to place this now back on top. Nicely aligned. Good. I'm going to plug in the wire before I forget for the fan. I'll just screw this all together. You can get the main block on now. Again, adding plenty. Adding too much. Be like, no, what are you doing? Just going to pop that down. I'm just having one last look at it, just to be sure. We don't want to take this off again. I'm just checking, look. Oh, there's almost enough surface tension there to lift up the board, so that means it's got a good bit of adhesion there. Oh, and do you see that? It just fell straight through. Not what I wanted. Put a bit of foam under it, keep it in the right place. Get it aligned. Get it on that bit of foam. That's better. Much better. So uncharacteristically, I was running a open source benchmarking logging type piece of software, and I did actually store a log from yesterday when it was running quite hot, and although I can remember what it was saying one of the GPUs was running at 40 degrees and the other one was running at 91 at idle. So I'm pretty sure I can remember all the important stuff. It will be neat to see if there's any retrievable information from that, and we can do a comparison. Okay, so that's in. You can see that's spring bracket there. That does allow a little bit of compliance on there. That's nice. We're going to have to do something about that lacquer sticker, but we'll figure that out. Now, remember there was 2 springs. Still not quite figured out or located where they're supposed to go, but I think they might go here. I'm not sure why, but that's my gut feeling, because there's 2 of those. Where would they normally sit? Sit there and sit there. Again, hard to know. I suspect that's what they're for, but to make sure that they stay in the right place, though, I'll put this on this way around. And that's that. And I'm glad I plugged that power cable in when I did, because you can't get to it afterwards. So we just need to fix this part. So when we see this flung off in my PC later, there, the back office quality seal. Woohoo! That's groovy. So the only thing left to do is plug them into the machine and see if they work. So this might be the conclusion for it. If it is, thank you for watching. And if it's not and there's something to report, it's going to happen now. Say hello to the hands. I'd like to conclude this tale saying it was overall a positive experience. However, that wouldn't quite be the truth. So as you can see on the screen, I do have previous data and I do have new data. And we can see there's quite a significant reduction in the temperature. Let's say 20 degrees, arguably, on one of those graphics cards. Now that in itself is fantastic, don't get me wrong, I'm very pleased. However, the machine was still resetting on these last few days, which are pretty much the hottest days of the year. So I suspect I need to do the same thing with the main CPU, and hopefully that will prevent it from happening. Now I have a workaround. So what I did, I went into Windows and I told it to only use 50% of the CPU, restrict that thing down, and absolutely it seems to perform pretty much exactly as before. So I guess having all of those cores means it's still responsive and it still works. It just means they, I don't know, don't boost up to their maximum speed or something. Rendering doesn't seem to take a loss because rendering takes ages anyway, and you start it and walk away and come back. So I guess going away and coming back to find your machine crashed and no rendering happening is obviously way worse than rendering happening a bit slower. So overall, I can continue with my work and I'm reasonably happy with that. So hopefully that's been of some use to you. Enjoy reheat compounding your graphics cards and CPUs, and let me know how you get along down below. Thanks for watching.